exciting episode of Mulligans. My lovely wife, Shannon Stiles, and I'm Scott Stiles. And today we have, I'm going to say it right now on the record, my favorite guest of all time.
Well, I think so. I would hope so, at least.
I'm telling you, I could not sleep last night, Harley. I was excited about this. Just so you know, everybody knows when I did my Fox Sports radio show back in the day and everything, that I just love the horse Secretariat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today it's with great privilege I want to introduce the oldest daughter of Penny Chenery, is Kate Tweedy. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
Are you the oldest daughter?
I'm actually the second. The movie made it look like that. No, it's okay. The reason that was is because Sarah was like, "Oh, I don't want to talk to the screenwriter. You talk to him." So I talked to him, and he went, "Oh, okay. I'll make her the the character of the kid."
Whatever they needed to do.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. Yeah.
And if you see behind Kate right now, if you're watching this, you can see the actual photographs of Secretariat back in the day, who ended up really delivering almost, or inventing and creating over 600 foals, if that's the terminology you use.
Over 654, I think. And actually right behind me is Mom as a 12-year-old. Isn't that great?
That's incredible.
So the 50th anniversary is here. Real quick, Shannie, I was telling Shannie last night that there's 2 foals still alive from
I think so.
And they're in their 30s. They showed them right before the Kentucky Derby.
Yes. Yeah. The only 2 left. Quite a few, his pedigree is still very much felt in horse racing. Like, for example, in this Derby, almost all of them were Secretariat descendants. And in almost every big race, 3/4 of the horses are Secretariat descendants. But of course, it's been,
Sure.
5 generations or so, but still, it's great to know he's still, his power is still being felt.
So for the people that don't know who Secretariat is, would one of you like to just kind of explain it to them? Because I am not a sports person, and my husband, of course, is. And every single time we talk about the perfect moment in sports, or like the perfect
it's the one event. It's the one event of perfection. Is what I call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I'll let you go ahead.
Well, so it's 50 years since Secretariat won the Triple Crown of Racing, the Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont, all in record time. None of his records have been beaten. And the way he won his last race, which is the longest and hardest in horse racing, he was 31 lengths ahead, which is almost a 1/4 of a mile. An unbelievable performance that no one ever expected, and I don't think we will ever see duplicated. And then, of course, the fact is that 50 years later, nobody's come close to his times. And in every other sport, and correct me, Scott, if I'm wrong, but I think in every other sport where there was a record in 1973, they've all been broken except for Secretariats. I think that's correct. I think that's a fair statement.
And Kate, what I get choked up about is this was a country in divide at the time. In 1973, Vietnam War was just coming out, or towards the tail end of Vietnam War. You had the Watergate thing kind of taking place. And in 6 weeks, a 4-legged animal brought the entire country and practically the world together. I'll never forget the quote I read. There was a great writer that spoke to Jack Nicklaus. And he said, Jack Nicklaus goes, "I was standing in my living room in Columbus, Ohio, and I stood up and I cried as he's coming down the front stretch." And the writer goes, "Do you know why, Jack?" He goes, "Because once in our lifetime, we see an act of perfection." And you saw that. And it was almost like 22 years to the date, Jack Nicklaus played the perfect back 9 and won the Masters at 46 years old.
You're kidding. I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. And that it sends chills down my spine.
Yeah, that's my favorite story. You told the perfect story. That is my favorite story about watching that Belmont. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So speaking of watching it, so what was it like to be a part of this and to be there to see this history being written?
Ran faster than the next quarter was faster.
I know. And well, the thing is, we knew he was great. But, horse race is a horse race. Things happen. You never know. He might wake up not feeling well, So we had a lot of hopes. We also had a lot of fear, and there was a lot riding on it because Mom had essentially bet the farm, so to speak, and had to, right? It wasn't, it was because we had to pay taxes on Granddad's estate. But I just remember being completely kind of carried away by this wave of history, is what it felt like. We were spectators at something truly amazing. And so, I remember sort of also being odd on behalf of my family. It's like, how did this happen to us? How did we get so lucky? And especially the morning of the Belmont, I remember waking up because the Triple Crown had not been won in 25 years. And people really had sort of thought, never happen again. And there we were on the brink. And it was like, oh my gosh, we could be the ones to do this. I still get goosebumps. Anyway, it was just, it was surreal. And actually the whole time was surreal because I was in college, I was 20, I was very much a member of my generation, protesting the war and everything else. And then
a little freedom.
yeah. And then my family was associated with this amazing horse, Sport of Kings, two different worlds, absolutely different worlds. And I've sort of flowed between them kind of with my eyes wide open going, wow, what's going to happen next? Yeah.
We're talking to Kate Tweedy, who is the middle daughter to Penny Chenery, who was the owner of Secretariat. And 50 years ago, this past year was the anniversary of Secretariat in 1973, winning the Triple Crown. And, one of the things that I want to touch on is let's go back to the early days. Let's go back to when Grandma passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, you go, I don't know how accurate the film is. I know there's some things that you got to build the drum up and everything. And,
mostly true.
And Granddad was still around, but yet he was starting to lose a little bit of his memory and that sort of thing, if I remember. And I've read some things on this as well. And it's really up to your mom, Penny, to kind of to line things up. And her brother was really against it. Mm-hmm. And actually, Penny's, your father at one time was really thought she was crazy for trying to do something like this on her own.
Well, back then, I don't think women did that, right?
No, not much.
Normal.
Not much. But, she was the kind of woman who really should have been running a business from the beginning. She was sort of a dutiful housewife, but not a happy housewife in the sense that she was bored. She had a lot of drive and smarts and talent. And so, grandmother died. Granddad was declining rapidly and ended up going into a hospital in April. And really Mom had to take over from then on, but she still had children at home and she lived in Denver and the farm was in Virginia and Granddad was in New York. And so she was on the road a lot. But it gave her wings. She just was so happy. She adored her father. She adored horses. So the idea of fulfilling his dream of, carrying on his legacy just, elated her. And also it called on the skills that she had. She wasn't a great cook, but she was really good at running a meeting, So, so this was a perfect thing for her. And my sister and I watched her blossom. And that was a great role model. That was a wonderful experience for us also to see her, sort of step into the role she'd always needed to be in.
So speaking of role model, what would you say that you took away from your mother most? What are a few of the lessons that you just really grabbed on?
Well, she described herself once as a cheerleader. And she was much more than that. But one of the things is that she really advocated for the horse and for the sport. And she said Secretariat couldn't speak, but she could. So she was his voice. And she was very egalitarian in the sense that she loved, if you loved a horse, you were on the same level as her. She was not at all one of these snooty owners. She appreciated people who cared about the sport and who cared about the horses. And so she was always willing to talk to fans, always willing to sign a, ball cap or a postcard or whatever. And so that was a great lesson. And I've tried to follow in her footsteps there. But also she said very famously to young women, she said, forget you're a woman, do your best, never take no for an answer. And those are great lessons, for anybody, but for young women in particular.
And there's a line in the movie where your dad is not happy with her being so absorbed by Secretariat.
Yeah.
And she says to him at the table that, she goes, I gave up my career to raise a family. And you could tell that she was a woman that liked challenges and loved the opportunity to she didn't like the spotlight. It didn't look like, but she loved the challenge of when people doubted her, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was a great line in the movie as well, where, I gave up my career to raise this family, and this is my time to help my family. And she loved her dad. You could tell she loved her father.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, Dad did try to be supportive. He was as supportive as he knew how to be, but he was very much a man of his era. And he was, he had married a woman he would hope would stay home and, entertain his clients. He was a lawyer, and he'd, do nice dinner parties and play golf and tennis, and that wasn't her. And so mom would say, he really tried, but he kept waiting for me to go back home. And I just wasn't going to go back home, because, she, as I said, she had really sprouted, grown wings, she had become something much, much stronger. But he tried, he really did. I think it was just, there were no role models for two powerful adults with powerful careers in the same marriage in those days. It happens now, but it's not easy. It's not easy even now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How important was Miss Hamm's role?
Oh, she was very important. She was, when Granddad got senile, she had been his right-hand person for 50 years. So when Granddad got senile, Elizabeth had all the knowledge, and she advised Mom and supported Mom, and was very, she was a real rock for Mom to lean on. She was a great person, very smart herself, and a great rider, great athlete herself.
Is the part true then when your father is actually flying back because they figured out the taxes are going to be about $6.5 million for inheritance tax or something like that, I believe. And Miss Hamm comes in saying that your grandfather signed basically power of attorney 5 years ago, putting your mom in charge of the horses. And I think your uncle was Hollis.
My uncle Hollis, yeah.
Yeah. That he is going to challenge that. And she goes, I can tell you what. Miss Hamm stood up and said, he was sound of mind, and that sort of thing. I thought Miss Hamm really, showed her loyalty to your mother.
She did. No, she absolutely did. She was loyal to Granddad more than anything. She wanted to carry out his wishes, And the thing is, I don't know that it happened quite that way, but because Mom and Uncle Hollis and they left out my Aunt Miggy, they were all on the board of directors. So they all had equal votes. But what I think the way Mom told it to me was that she played the emotional card, and the emotional card is, these are Dad's horses. He's still alive. We cannot sell them. We have no right to. And then after he was gone, Secretariat had already become, very, he had completed his 2-year-old year. He was horse of the year. He'd won already huge amount of money. So at that point, when it came to that moment, I think Hollis and everybody was kind of willing to bank on the gamble, and it was a huge gamble. So the drama with Hollis had happened a little bit earlier. It still happened. It was still, trying to, how do we get him to go on board with this? But by the time the actual syndication occurred, everybody was kind of going, what are our choices? Because they had a huge tax bill to pay. And what's so interesting is that, they showed her turning down a $7 million offer from Ogden Phipps. Now, she did turn down a $7 million offer, but it wasn't Ogden Phipps. It was an Irish consortium, and they were going to take Secretariat to Ireland. He would never have run in our plastic races. And Mom said no. Yeah, Mom said no. America deserves to see him run. We're not going to give him to the Irish. even for an extra $1 million.
I don't know if I've ever read that anywhere.
No, it's not well talked about. I think Bill Mack's book talks about it, Secretariat Making of a Champion. But
I love Bill Mack's stuff. I mean, about
great stuff. What a great sports writer. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so no, that was a huge gamble too, and I think that might have been a point where, Hollis, my uncle, and my dad would have gone, "What, Penny, what are you doing?" But Disney had to make it very, very, they used examples that were accurate in tone and in content, but maybe not in details. Like in the movie, I don't sing. so that's saying you don't want to hear me sing.
I love Hollis's line, and I don't know if it's true, but it was kind of endearing at the end because he was so against all this, and all of a sudden at the Belmont for the open gate, she goes, "Oh, Hollis, you're here." He goes, "I got a tip on a horse." I thought that was, and then
there was some
your mom actually being in the scene. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Well, being in the scene, weren't you in a scene in the movie also?
I was in the Belmont scene. Yeah, I'm kind of behind Diane Lane. If you're looking at the screen, I'm to the left, a couple of rows up behind Diane Lane going, "Go, go, go." And you want to hear a funny story about the filming of that scene?
I love it.
So it's supposed to be a hot day in New York, right? And it's a freezing cold day in Kentucky. We're filming it at Keeneland. And so because there's this stiff wind and everybody's in sleeveless outfits, they put up this big screen to protect us from the wind. Well, our eyes are supposed to be tracking a truck that's going at a certain speed along the dirt rail. So we would, can't see the track. So instead they have a guy walking in front of us with a popsicle stick and a little cutout of a horse walking in front of us. And we're going, "Go, go, go." It's high-tech solutions for, anyway, it worked. It worked,
Right.
Only on Mulligans will you get inside information about the filming of Secretariat.
There you go. Yeah. I've got another great story if you want to hear it.
We'd love it.
About the film. So, in the final scene, they have the Triple Crown trophy, which is this triangular trophy, and there are very few of them. So they wanted to use our Triple Crown trophy. Well, it was at a museum and we had to get it to the, to the site where they were filming. And we wouldn't let it, our friend wouldn't let it out of his hands. Of course not. They said on the plane, they said, "You have to check it." "No, I'm not going to check it." "Well, it won't fit under the seat." "Well, you have to check it." "I'm not going to check it. It won't fit overhead." So he's arguing and they're about to throw him off the plane. He's saying, "You don't understand. They're going to miss the shoot. It's going to delay everything." When the pilot hears and he says, "Oh, that's what that is. You can put it in my cockpit. I'll take care of it." So that's how the Triple Crown trophy got to the set.
Flew first class.
Isn't that great? Flew first class. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great.
So did your mother was she always really in tune with her intuition? Because it seems like no one else saw what she saw in this horse, and she just went with what she knew. Did she live her life that way?
I would say she grew into it as she got older, because I think in the early days, she was really doing what was expected of her. And if she had really followed her intuition, she might never have gotten married. No, I mean, she loved my dad, but she really she should have been in business from the beginning. But, in the 1949, when she got married, that's not what women did. And she was not going to buck convention that way. She just wasn't. But I think she always sort of regretted it. She almost got her MBA from Columbia, but she dropped out to get married, and she always regretted that. So had she been following her intuition, she would have gotten that degree. But I do think, I think it takes a while. I mean, I think a lot of women, they're in their 40s and, they really come to understand themselves better. And that's what happened with her. And then, but she always loved horses. She always got horses. And I think that was certainly true with Secretariat. Yeah.
So what is your fondest memories through this whole process? Even, after Secretariat was done, I think it raced 4 or 5 more times, won majority of those, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I love the last race. I forget where it was at, but it was on a cold day. And, he sounded like a freight train when he'd run, and the steam was coming out of his nostrils. I watched that video again today.
Did you?
Yeah. It was just phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, but what was your fondest memories of
My little dog is barking. I hope you don't mind.
No, we
fine.
don't mind at all.
She needs to be in the picture.
Oh, what's her name?
Hoagie.
Oh, how
So anyway, she was yipping. I didn't want to disturb the. So my fondest memory, I guess, would be. Well, I loved going to visit him after the races or before the races in the barns, and feeding him carrots, and I think those moments when he was out of the spotlight and it was just us with the horse, those felt, because I loved riding and I was, I had a horse when I was younger, and I think those felt kind of the most like, wow, this horse is truly amazing. But I loved, I just watching the amazing things he did. There's some 2-year-old races when he just blasted between 2 horses, and the Stanford race when he was 2, or the Marlborough when he, Secretariat won and River Ridge was second, our other great horse. And then of course the Preakness when he, passed the whole field and, on the first turn. I don't know. I mean, I like the intimate moments with him, but the sporting triumphs were,
Did your mom and Sham's owner really have that banter back and forth at the press conferences? Or
well, she had a lot of respect for Sham's owner. They respected each other. So there was a little bit of amplifying for, trash talking for drama. And the trainer was not a hothead, and he was not rude. It was more like, my horse is better than your horse. It was not personal at all. But they made a great movie, and so they knew the elements that you needed to amp up a little to make it a great movie.
But you've indicated, I've watched some other podcasts that you were on, and you've indicated that your mother was, Diane actually was a little meeker than your mother was.
She was a little soft. Well, and of course in the movie, it's a much more dramatic arc to go from relatively shy person. Mom was not shy. If you saw any of the original clips, she was, footage, she was a media. She knew how to make funny, short, to the point comments. And later she just loved, the attention of the fans. So, Diane Lane, I thought she was wonderful, but I think the way the script was written, it wanted to show a bigger growth arc for her, whereas Mom started out pretty strong.
Did you have a chance to actually sit down with Diane Lane?
Yes. Oh, she was fabulous. She came out and spent a day with us in Boulder where Mom was living, and it was just no hair, no makeup, no entourage, totally, just working woman. And she and Mom bonded over the fact that they loved their dads and they both were working moms. And she was just great. And she kept in touch with Mom, sent her postcards every year, right up to the end. She was a very classy woman.
So Can you tell the story about Peaches?
Yes. So Diane Lane looked so much like Mom, and they dressed her in these, they had a really good dresser who dressed her in classic clothes, very much like Mom used to wear. And Mom in the 70s had this big bouffant hairdo, like big. And but Diane Lane's hair wouldn't do that, even with a lot of product, it just wouldn't do that. So they gave her a wig, and she named the wig Peaches. And so when she had Peaches on the set, they didn't want Mom and Diane Lane, when Diane Lane was all dressed up, and Mom in the same shot, because they didn't want anyone to snap a picture in it to get out in the media. But at one point we were in the eating tent, and all together, and Mom's there, and Diane sneaks in costume, and we're just looking from one to the other. It's like we're being transported back to the 60s and 70s. It's like, it was so amazing. And we all just kind of stopped eating and stared. It was great. And Diane Lane was having so much fun because she knew what effect she was having on us.
One of my, when I had a phone conversation with you a couple weeks ago when we were trying to get together for this podcast, I told you one of my prized possessions is Ronnie Turcotte signing a picture for me.
Yes.
And the picture is him looking back because he couldn't believe how he couldn't hear anybody.
Yeah.
His words are, I couldn't hear anybody. I had to look back, just take a peek, see where everybody was at.
Absolutely.
And, that's so I have that hanging. Yeah. And it's just.
That's the best. That's the best photograph. Yeah.
It is. It was captured just at the right moment.
Yeah.
Of of a historical run that day.
Yeah.
Even the jockey couldn't believe what
No.
had happened.
No, it was, what could have happened. This never happens, that you don't hear the horses behind you. So what could possibly have happened? Only an accident, right? No other explanation.
Good point.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah. So I think he was worried about the others, but no.
Was Eddie really involved that much with the horse? I mean,
Eddie Sweat? Oh yeah, he was instrumental. He was like, it's like it takes a village. You have to have, really loving, caring childhood to become a successful adult. Certainly the same with horses, and any kind of athlete, I think. But so Eddie slept near him, took care of him, talked to him, talked baby, talked to him. Eddie was his mainstay, and Secretariat was a ham. He would play with Eddie. He would steal the rub rag out of his pocket and play keep away, or grab the rake and say, "You can't clean my stall." And they were like that. Yeah.
And he really did call him Big Red, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He called him Big Red. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, the movie portrays Secretariat as a ham, like we've talked about, but it's Bill, what was the writer's name? Bill
Knack.
Bill Knack.
Yeah.
Said one time he's out on the farm he said they're sitting there talking and they're having photographs taken. And all of a sudden, Secretariat just stops and watches a plane fly overhead.
Yeah.
And it just goes on. Then he went back like, "Okay, did you have a question for me, sir?"
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he was so smart, so unusual. And I think all the best athletes are super smart, human or otherwise. The other thing he would do is if you'd go to Claiborne, visit him, and he had this big, beautiful 5-acre paddock. This is where he was in retirement in Kentucky. He'd see you coming and he'd sort of do a couple of circles in the paddock and kick up his heels and, toss his head and say, "Show off a little." And then he'd come running up to the gate and skid to a halt and pose. I mean, he was amazing. It was really, yeah. He had fun. He had fun being the king of the horses.
Most people think that Secretariat was born in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
But he was actually born in Virginia, right?
He was born in Virginia, about 7 miles from where I live now. My grandfather's farm. My grandfather was a Virginian, and he had grown up very poor, wanted to make money, went to New York to make money, came back in the 1930s and bought the farm and established this, wonderful horse farm. And that's where Secretariat was born. And somehow that fact has sort of been, sort of lost to the mists of time. So we are trying to create a monument to him here in Virginia that's going to, help people go take ownership and say, no, he's a Virginia horse.
How can people go about contributing to that monument? Because we love to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, secretariatforvirginia.com is the website, and there's a QR code there and a link to how you can make a payment. Secretariatforvirginia.com.
And what's the goal?
The goal is 795,000, and we are at 550,000. So we are really getting there. And if you'll bear with me a minute, I have a picture of the statue. It's really gorgeous.
I would love that. Yeah.
Is that beautiful?
That is gorgeous.
It's life size and a half. So it's astonishing. It's really good. The sculptor, Jocelyn Russell, really, she talked to the vet, she talked to Ronnie, she talked to everybody who knew him and really worked on getting him just perfect.
Now, do you guys still have a relationship? Do you still have conversation with Ronnie from time to time? Just reminisce?
Yeah, from time to time. He doesn't travel anymore. He's been in a wheelchair since 78, and he's just a remarkable spirit. So brave and always cheerful. So yeah, we talk periodically. He's just, and I hope he gets to come to one of the 50th anniversary celebrations. It would be so great if he could.
Well, what a genius move to put him on that horse, because he was a fearless rider. I've read a lot about him, and he took some tumbles. Obviously, when your mom was trying to get ready to meet with him, he had just had an accident. And was not in the best of shape.
He's got a great new biography out, and I don't remember the name, but he and his brothers, there were several of them that were really top jockeys. But fascinating story. Grew up very poor, and made a huge success of his life. Yeah.
Incredible. So speaking of books, you actually have a book yourself. You're the author of Secretariat's Meadow. And
Yes.
it's pretty incredible because 24,000 copies were sold in the first 6 months.
I need a signed copy.
Well, we're almost at that last. We only have about 200 left. We're at the end of our print run, and maybe we'll get some more. But yeah, it's been a 13-year amazing journey because we've gone all over the country talking to people and selling the book, and it's just been such a wonderful adventure for us.
So it sounds like in the beginning, when you started writing the book, it wasn't something that everybody grabbed onto and wanted. You kind of had to take some of your mother's resilience and drive, and you had to forget you're the woman, do your best, and never accept no as an answer, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and in the beginning, she has very high standards. In the beginning, she was thinking, well, I don't know, is this gonna be good enough, for Secretariat? And then by the time we were all done, I have a co-author, and it was like, oh, this is going to be a hit. She was really excited about it. And I think the same thing in the beginning, it was like, well, we should write this story, but we didn't know how, what shape it would take. We didn't know we'd get that gorgeous cover. I don't know, here it is. This painting by Jamie Coram is the most gorgeous cover. And I think that's one thing that made it sell so well. But then we got all of Mom's personal photographs, and the story is a great story. So, we just did the work, and it did really well. We're very, very happy about that.
So, can you share with us about your family today? I know you did something like international studies or something like that.
I was I majored in Latin American studies. I love Spanish, and that's all that stuff in the movie. That's all true. And I ended up going to law school. I became an immigration lawyer. I worked with refugees from all over the world. And then when I had little kids, it was a very stressful job, and I wanted to be home with my kids more. So I ended up becoming a teacher so I could be on their schedule. So I had 2 daughters, taught ESL for a long time. And then I really my first love was writing. And so then I got back into writing, and I'm working on a memoir a biography memoir of Mom right now, which I hope to finish next year.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, we'll have to have you back on that.
Great. Thank you.
How about your 2 brothers and your sister?
One sister in Albuquerque, 2 brothers still in Colorado. My brother John is a filmmaker. He made a film called Penny and Red about Mom. That she commissioned. It was actually her response to Disney. I mean, she loved the movie, but she also thought, well, I have a little bit of a different story to tell. So she and John made that documentary. He's made several documentaries. He's got one right now on PBS. It's called This Is Not Who We Are, which is about Boulder and its history with racism and kind of coming to terms with some of the incidents that have happened recently.
So I asked some friends a couple questions, okay, from friends that will be watching this, that people watch this, that ask her about the coin. Who has the coin these days?
Well, here's the sad truth. Nobody realized at the time how significant that coin would be.
Oh, no.
So the coin has been lost to, the sands of time. It's, because at the time it was a coin toss. He was, they'd seen a lot of good horses come through there. You never know who's going to be the great champion. Right. So sadly, we don't have that coin.
Well, and at the time, didn't you have another horse that was doing very well, and it was winning also? Correct? Well,
Reba Ridge, who the movie left out because they said you can't have 2 champions in the same movie. Reba Ridge won the Derby and the Belmont the year before. We could have had 2 Triple Crowns back to back. He did not win the Preakness because he didn't like mud, and it rained. It was sloppy as could be out there. So, but yeah, so the year before we had this great horse too. And so, you don't know until at the time, you just don't know quite how significant something is. So I'm very sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, Bull Hancock. What was his? I mean, he was very special to your mother at one time.
Very special. Yes, he was. And he had been a great friend of my grandfather. And they had, so Granddad was a little older than Bull. So when Bull was getting going, Granddad helped him out. And one of the ways he helped him was breeding our great mare to his stallion Prince Quillo, and that was our first horse of the year, Hill Prince, in 1950. So Bull had this new horse imported from England. He needed someone to, champion him. And so Granddad did that for Bull. And then later, when Mom needed help, when Granddad died, Mom needed help, Bull helped her. And he was a tremendous, and then Bull died, and then Seth helped Mom. So it's this wonderful back and forth between the Hancocks and Chenerys for 3 decades. Amazing. 3 generations.
The movie portrays at the end, we're hoping like maybe there's a love interest there between Seth and the dancing going on.
Well, I've had that question before. He was married. He was already married, and he may have already had kids. He was young. He was 23, but he was well down that road, and I was just a college kid, so, but his kids now are running his stable, are running Claiborne Farm. So the Hancocks have persisted very well there.
We just have a few minutes left, and we'll kind of cover your book and how people can send money in for the statue as well. But one of the questions I have, is, 20 years old, you're like, I don't want to go to a horse race. I got so many things to do, and so we kind of pushed, and like Mom's like, hey, I need you here, or is it something that you kind of got engaged in as time went along?
Well, see, I was really torn. I mean, I had gone to the farm a lot as a kid. I loved it. I loved horses. I loved there's this whole mystique. It was really great. But when you are a teenager, I'm sure, they get caught up in their own world. So by the time Secretariat was really, by the 70s, when I had gone to Ecuador, and when I was in Ecuador, it was like, no, I'm happy being in Ecuador. But when I came home, it was like, oh no, this is something really fabulous. This is really special. So, I was happy to go. And it was, I was doing a work study program in New York that spring, and I would see my mom on the cover of the daily racing form, and my horse was being profiled in the New York Times. I mean, that was like, oh my gosh, we got to be on national TV for the broadcast of the Belmont, and they stuck a microphone in my face and said, so what do you think about it? It's like, wow, it's great, but that's pretty heady stuff for a 20-year-old.
No, exactly. That's my point. It's a lot to take in when you have so many, you're being pulled with political views and, protests and everything else. And then here's your mom and the horse, everything on Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, your family name is out there. And,
I know.
It had to be overwhelming at times.
It totally was. And so, it actually took me many years to integrate the two parts of my life. I would say, decades really. And now what's great is that now at this age, I'm able to really feel great about stepping into Mom's shoes and carrying on her legacy and the horse's legacy. And I get great joy in doing this, talking to you, talking to fans, being the ambassador of something so very special. It's a tremendous privilege for me.
So when you have something that incredible happen in your life, how do you move on so that the rest of life doesn't pale in comparison to that moment?
Well, I have had some pretty great moments, too. I mean, I think you have to keep your feet on the ground, because that is a once in a lifetime thing. It's another world. That's not what my daily world is. My daily world was taking care of my kids, going to work, paying the bills, mowing the lawn. And that's where life is. This other thing was almost like this, wow, did that really happen? And now, I'm retired, sort of have to go to work, thank heavens. It's sort of like, it's a fun thing I get to do. It's like a hobby at this point. And it just feels like, and then I get to write too. I'm a writer. So, I feel like things have come back together in a wonderful way. And I feel really good about it all. Yeah.
Well, Kate, we feel really blessed that you've taken time out of your schedule this is a dream come true for I know me.
Usually I speak a lot more, but this is his
thing.
Secretariat has been everything to him.
I love that.
I wanted just some hair in a vial. And I lost out on an auction. I was so
happy because it probably wasn't really Secretariat's, but somebody was making good money off of it.
Oh, there are a few lockets out there. Tell me, I wish I had one too.
Oh, I was up in the $4,000 or $5,000 range, and somebody says you're done.
Yeah.
Take it down.
Yeah. No, well,
But, yeah,
I understand.
Let's go over Kate's.
Yes. So your book, Secretariat's Meadow, it's actually about the history of your family and you go
And the land. And it's really the story of the village. How did this great horse come to our family? And that's the question that it answers. And it's an influence of many things. We call it the land, the family, the legend. It's, Granddad had this overnight success after, 30 years hard work. That's how these things usually work, right? But so that was sort of the question.
How can they get the book, Kate? Can you go to Amazon or how?
No, the publisher is Dementi. We used to have it on Amazon, but we're down to so few. We're just selling it through the publisher. It's Dementi Milestone. Actually, go to our Facebook page, Secretariat's Meadow.
Okay, perfect.
Page. Yeah, and you can order it through that. That's the
copies of the book if they want it, or
absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, send a message and we'll send
I'll get on tomorrow.
Order one tomorrow. And Kate sign that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to.
And then to help the cause for Secretariat to be the sculpture to be in Virginia, they just have to go to secretariatforvirginia.com, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And just one last point. Kentucky has 4 statues. New York has 2, Canada 1, Virginia none. So we're trying to rectify that.
Where Secretariat was actually born.
Where he was.
And if this thing gets done, when it does get done, you and I are flying out there for the unveiling.
Well, I'll tell you, March 30th, which is his birthday next year, that's going to be the big unveiling. We're going to have a nice party.
Oh, we're there.
Okay, cool.
And I'll cry again.
That's when I see the sensitive side in my husband. Anything about Secretariat.
Well, I love meeting fans like you. I do. It's just great.
It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll definitely try to help the cause. And if there's anything you need, please reach out.
Thank you so much. Lovely. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you in March.
Yeah,
yes.
We will. Thank you. Bye, Kate.
Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
A big thank you to our special guest, Kate Tweedy, this evening, who is the middle daughter to Penny Chenery, who was the owner of Secretariat. 50 years ago this year, Secretariat set records at the, it's called, gosh darn.
Belmont?
No. Let's go back to the beginning. Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont.
Yes.
I'm so shocked that we had a chance to talk to her today. So still records that have not been broken 50 years later.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
31 links,
mm-hmm.
and that's never been broken.
Yeah.
It probably never will be, will it?
No.
I mean, that would be.
So what we didn't cover is when Secretariat died, they did an autopsy, and Secretariat's heart was twice the size even of a normal racehorse. Therefore, it could build more oxygen up and have longer endurance. So God blessed this horse, and it was very special.
I don't think it had to do with the oxygen. I think it had to do with the passion that Secretariat brought to it, right? Big heart.
the movie does this horse justice, and as Lucian Lawrence said the night before, this horse is going to look like it has wings tomorrow, and it did. It won by 31 lengths to win the Triple Crown. So on behalf of Shannie Stiles, I'm Scott Stiles. Another great episode of Mulligans. If you have any suggestions or any people you want us to interview, how can they get a hold of us, Shannie?
Well, we'll give my number. They can reach out at 913-232-1187. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to bring to the table. And please go out and help this cause.
Yes.
Not just because it's my husband's favorite, but, think about it. Virginia needs that accolades also, because that's where it was born.
Yeah. And also like and share this podcast and all the podcasts, if you will, and share it and let some friends know about it as well. Until next time, on behalf of my beautiful wife, Shannie, I'm Scott. Good night, everybody. It's time to go home.
We'll see you next time.